Hey, this is Lee Balcom, and I just got off a call with a coaching client, and I wanted to talk a little bit about that coaching call because this person said something that I hear very often from people. This person said, I'm completely stuck. I don't know what to do. And part of what I hear in that is something that we want to address today of what do you do to get it unstuck, to get that door open into your relationship, because that's what you want, is to open the door into a renewed relationship for your life. So how do you do that? Well, I kind of reminded myself of this experience I had with my daughter. We were traveling in Morocco. And here we were in this completely different place for the two of us and feeling like strangers, but the beauty of the buildings there, they were just so beautiful with the tiles and the colors and so beautiful. And one of the things that I noticed was that these huge doors that were just massive openings to these beautiful buildings, they open the same way they do here. They had hinges. And it reminded me of that saying that big doors swing on small hinges. And that made me think about the fact that sometimes people see this project of saving their marriage as such a massive undertaking that they don't know where to get started because it seems like they have to take big actions, right? They have to find some huge thing that's going to shift it. And it's really three small things, three small hinges that swing that. Now you got to get it unlocked, and the lock that's holding back your possibilities of saving your marriage are the hurt and resentment that come with the hurt and the pain from the past, right? So we hold on to that hurt and resentment. And by the way, you have it and your spouse has it. And so you both are going to have to find some ways of unlocking that. But you're choosing to do that. Over the past 30 years, more than 30 years, the last 3 decades, I've worked with couples who are trying to figure out as a couple or as an individual on how to get that door to swing back open, the door to possibilities. You're standing out there in front of it going, how do I get back into this relationship that is so important to me? And it can seem so overwhelming. You can feel so stuck unless you recognize 3 hinges are what do it. 3 small hinges, which is what I talk about in the 3 simple steps. Consider that the same thing as those hinges because I want to tell you about those. If you're interested in the book, you can find that by going to savethemarriage.com/book. Savethemarriage.com/book. That'll take you right there to find how to save your marriage in 3 simple steps. Now let's talk about those 3 steps because they are the hinges. And I want to talk about why they're the hinges. You see, we have some pretty deep-seated needs as humans that get sidetracked along the way. Not only that, we misunderstand marriage. And so part of our process here is to help us find a different understanding of marriage and what that truly means. Then what do we do as individuals? And then what do we do with our spouse? Those are the 3 hinges. Okay? So let's first talk about what a marriage is about. A marriage is a unique relationship. It is the unique relationship where you say, I am going to go through life with you together. You know, you think about all of us in the world kind of going through life in different ways, taking different routes, taking different directions. And then there are some people that maybe you travel with closely, kind of your family, right? You might travel with closely, but let's say I consider that my family is on this route with me, but my brother is choosing one path, another brother is choosing another path, my parents are choosing paths, my kids are choosing paths. There are different paths, and sure, we intersect and we come close together, but that's a little different than the path I've set with my wife, because we have bound our lives together. My spouse and I bind our lives together financially in choices we make, right? And that determines how we're going to go through, how we're going to proceed. What happens to me affects her. What happens to her affects me. What choices I make affect her. What choices she makes affects me, because we have that close connection where we are choosing to be together in this. Or as I talk about it, being a we. We're a team. Now, that doesn't mean that there is no difference in our life path. It just means that we have decided to walk side by side down that path no matter where it takes us. You made that pledge too when you got married. And so part of what we often miss in that relationship and that understanding is that we are building a we, not two people kind of just walking together, but two people joined together. That is why in many religious traditions they have the concept of two becoming one, right? Two becoming one. And that unit means that you are bound together in some ways that you have to negotiate through, some ways that you have to work through, and some ways that you have to decide you're going to move in that direction. It's about being that we, though, that is important. And it affects everything, how you do your resources, how you deal with parenting issues, how you deal with the world coming at you, how you make choices and decisions along the way. And one of the big problems in many relationships is that they don't find a way of doing that as a team, and instead they make it oppositional. What do you want versus what do I want? And they clash, as opposed to joining together saying, where do we want to move? So I'm going to go kind of in reverse order of what I usually talk about these today. That bottom hinge, that is about building a new path, creating a new path to we, creating that path. That's the first C, that's the first hinge. So creating that new path, that means you're changing how you understand the relationship and how you've probably treated the relationship. Now, is that perfectly true? No. There are some couples who have little pieces and places where they see we, but not as fully as it needs to be in order to move forward. I will say this. I have never seen a couple who has really, really embraced we that didn't make it forward. I've rarely seen a couple who stay at you, me, who do make it. Some do. Some just keep stumbling along and they kind of make do, but they're not going to find it to be the most fulfilling it could be if they decided to say, we are a team, we're in it together. Now, if you're looking through the lens of hurt, resentment, pain, you're going, I don't know if I want to do that. I don't know if I want to join with my spouse. That's what you pledged to when you got married. That's what those vows are about, right? And the problems in relationships come because we don't move forward in ways that really truly embrace that being a we. That's where we get into trouble. We are in this together, okay? So sometimes you have to create that new path because you haven't been walking down that path and you have to find a new way of doing that. You're choosing to do that together as a team, supporting each other, making sure that you endure through this as a team. Okay, so that's the first thing. And by the way, for my client who is lost, that was my first point. How do you find a route that's we? How do we go through together? Because then you're not as lost. Now you know how you're going to proceed down the path. Okay, so then let's go to the next hinge, which is what's going to be with you. What's going to happen with you? The fact is that most adults at some point quit developing, quit growing, quit changing, quit being open to new possibilities because we think we have arrived. We've gotten there. And part of the danger of having arrived is that we begin to recede. You're either green or growing or ripe and rotting, as Ray Kroc said, founder of McDonald's. And that is so true. We are the possibilities of growth are always there. And when we grow stagnant, we bring that stagnation into all of our life, including our closest relationships. And so if we're going to pivot, we have to pivot into a place where we can choose growth and choose to enlarge ourselves and choose not to, kind of back off of what's important, kind of lose sight of our purpose, find our meaning. All of those pieces begin to fit together into taking us to somewhere bigger than we've been. That's the second hinge. The top hinge is connect with your spouse. Because a marriage is about connection. And if you're not connecting, then you're beginning to disconnect. There's only two things you can do. You can grow your connection or you can allow it to disconnect. There's no stable spot. That's why I talk about hitting the pause button. It's really not hitting the pause button. Hitting the pause button is starting the process of disintegration. And so we've got to undo that by working on connection. Remember, connection happens on those three levels of physical, emotional, and spiritual connection. Those are the 3 layers of that. Now, that's the way out, right? That's the path out. And there are lots of elements to that. There are lots of pieces to that. But if you're feeling lost, I want you to think that those are the 3 hinges that you need. Connect with your spouse, change yourself, create a new path. The lock, it feels so tight, but in actuality, the resistance is there because those aren't the way they need to be. They're not lubricated. They're not moving the way they need to. And once they begin to move, you realize that that lock you thought was holding you back, it's not so big. It's not so strong. It's really just because this hasn't been swinging enough, right? The door hasn't been swinging enough lately to keep it moving easily, and you got to reopen that. So your task is to reopen it. Now, I've told you the 3 elements, the 3 hinges. Connect with your spouse, change yourself, create a new path. Now, how are you connecting with your spouse? Physical, emotional, spiritual. And you got to find some ways of doing that slowly. Because it's like a door, if it's jammed, you can't just run into it hard. You got to work it a little bit and get it to move forward. And so those 3 layers of connection are important to attend to. Changing yourself. Where are you stuck? Where have you avoided growth? How do you need to get back to that? And finally, how do you need to create a new path? What are the places where you have failed to be a we? What are the places, and how can you transform your thinking? And if you need help with that, you can check out my book, How to Save Your Marriage in 3 Simple Steps. That'll tell you the 3 C's. And grab my system at savethemarriage.com. That's savethemarriage.com. And this is Lee Balcom wishing you the best as you work to save your marriage.